Excellent. Welcome to another episode of Build It Faster. We are your hosts, Mike and Joe, and again with us so soon. It's Josh. Josh, are you itchy? Are you itchy? Why are you back here so soon? I do miss you.
No, I've taken care of that. I've got some ointment, and my itchiness is gone. But I'm happy to be back, and yeah, it's been a wild week. Lot to share and catch up on. So I'm
It's
excited
important
y'all
to
have me on.
me. It's important to me. For those who did not see the last episode, to refer to the itch was him wanting to come back. He does it. There was no ointment, but I am glad to see you back so fast. And I mean that's kind of the theme, right? Look how
Yeah,
quickly, is kind of the theme here. And
yeah,
like
it's a
I did
pretty.
stub out a couple of cues I planned on throwing at him during this. But Josh, what makes you so excited to return so soon?
Oh, I mean, just the natural evolution of the project that started last week. It hasn't stopped self improving. But if I remember correctly, I think we were seeing number PR number 222 come through during our last chat, and we are now at like 740 PRs. Uh, yeah, it's been and that just in the current code base. We've done some other work in some of our other side projects as well. But yeah, so that's what excites me. It's I don't know. I've just been building it faster. So I don't know. I heard you guys are the ones to talk to. So
I mean,
yeah,
if you're
I'm
looking to
here.
build it faster, this is the place.
Are there any changes in the last week, Josh, that surprised you?
Oh, in the system, in the world.
In the in your system, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, yes. There's been a ton of just I don't know, just seeing the evolution of it and seeing some of the emergent behavior has been quite incredible. For example, last night I was watching some logs. I still work a lot in the CLI in the terminal, rather, working directly with Claude in the plugin, but we're getting more and more into the interface day by day, and should have some more of that to show a little bit today, but more deep dives next week. But anyways, one of the things I saw last night, I was watching, and so I've got a staging environment where kind of the larger jobs happen, and then I've got my dev set up where I do just kind of local work. It's on my Mac, so it's a smaller. It's just a less powerful machine, so I can't run as much. So I use it more for just like quick feedback dev work. Starting to use it for more UI work. But anyways, with that being said, so now there's kind of two separate work streams going. So there's multiple PRs getting pushed up, right? And so I'll have the dev team working on some UI elements, and that'll get pushed up, and then I'll have the staging working on like some backend or deploying, or it manages its own staging and CI server. So it's got all that stuff to take care of. Anyways, one of my commands as it's like waiting for work is it just kind of loops off and does productive work. I think we got into that last week, where as it's waiting for a ticket to come in, waiting for the PR to come in, waiting for like feedback, it starts to look around. Do I have any stale branches or work trees I can clean up? Is my documentation up to date? Are there any is there any low-hanging fruit? For instance, today it was we did a sprint where we just cleaned up 180 TypeScript warnings, right? And that was just it. And it was just like we had time, it was on the list, and just take care of some tech debt, But I've ranted a bit. So back to the original story. While they were working, and it was doing this, it noticed the PR in the queue, right? And it looked at it and it said, oh, well, this is not our PR, this is another agent's work. I said, so we shouldn't touch it, right? But let's leave a helpful comment while we're at it. And it left a comment saying what the issue was, and then just went on about its day. And that was so crazy to me. And I don't have prompts in there to I don't really have much around like stepping on the other PRs, right? It's just, this is emergent behavior that's just happening. And that to me is so magical, and literally why I drag myself out of bed every day after sleeping too little. That and this espresso blend cold brew I picked up, fantastic.
If your agent said we didn't do this, who did it?
Well, the other, it's streams of work, right? So I
One of
guess
the
you
other
can
agents.
you can consider think of an enterprise or a company. You have your dev team. They're one unit, right? One whole working towards the same goal, but they have their own work streams. They based off of ideally systems, tools in the system, CI, different kinds of things that prevent these people from stepping on each other's toes. This is all I've brought into the system, and it's just powered by good, clean development practices and maintenance that we've known and developed for what, decades at this point, right? YouTube specifically taught me so much about just agile and the project management side of things, right, over the years, and bringing those elements into it too. And it's not a magic box, right? It's just building these systems like we know how to build systems and not cutting corners, because right now is the best time to not cut corners, because now we don't have to sit and write all the docs. We don't have to sit and write all the comments. We don't have to sit and write all the tests, right? Those things can get written for us much faster and just make a more stable product, you know?
Question. So what I heard though, just so we can dwell on this for just a sec, because this is a fun surprise. I want to dwell on this. You have a couple different teams, different units of work being done where this a group or swarm or whatever works on this, they work on that, and it saw that it wasn't part of its own scope of work and avoided stepping on the toes, but maybe left a comment. Can you help me understand, maybe not in explicit terms, in case that's proprietary, but what is that organization? What is that team? If you can maybe even talk at a high level, that what are those?
Sure.
That example of the work streams was like your marketing team effing around in your thing, and they're like, listen, we're marketing, okay, we're talented, but we I could do this, but that's not my job. So like, what was it? Am I thinking about it right?
Yeah, more or less. So as far as like proprietary information, this stuff's all going to be open soon, right? I'm sharing this with the world. First we're going to get some some of the inner circle. Joe, I'm looking at you for some some private testing, some alpha testing, and just kind of get it out there, and then open it up, because I'm not building this to sell people an app, a product. I'm showing people a way of working. And whether or not people come in and listen to anything I'm saying, whether they go to my consulting site, whether they go to, one of my many, content apparatuses, whatever, I don't care. I'm still shipping, right? The system is built for me to make me work faster. I've got several products that kind of in flight that I'll be able to share more about next week. But, I'm using the system to build other tools. I know that these dev problems are going to be solved by these bigger labs. And, there's going to be tools that come out next year that are going to dwarf what I've built. But in the meantime, I'm going to keep building it and keep on applying what I've learned over the last, decade of doing this stuff. Keep going. But so to answer your question as far as the org, so think of it, you've got the kind of the core of the nerve center. That's AVA, right? The Autonomous Virtual Agency. Yes, and so this is like the router. This is the main. This is the heart and soul of the operation, essentially. So it's got knowledge of the entire world state, has knowledge of like what different flows of work are going, but its only capabilities are like read and then delegate, right? So it gets the information in based off the world state, based off the signal that comes in, it decides where to route that, right? And so from there, again, it's got a couple of like tools for doing some research and things like that, but from there it decides, okay, is this a GTM priority or is this an operations priority? And so that's your first split, right? So you've got, I'm calling this persona Ava, the operations side, and then you've got John, GTM side, right? And so below there, they have their own sub-agents that they can delegate to, right? And so for that example I talked about with a pull request, that's an operations side, right? They're doing dev work in our code base. But within that code base, or that operations branch, is obviously you got one that's more focused on back-end work. You've got one that's more focused on front-end work. And so these personas are built in with prompts and specific tooling for that profession. My back-end persona doesn't have access to front-end tools. It doesn't need to. It asks the front-end agent with that knowledge and that tool set to leverage that. And then that information gets distilled back to that AI or the other agent, right? And in this whole process, there's this distillation happening where the larger group of these teams is having some interaction between itself, trying to decide on the best, way to solve the problem at hand, right? And then that's bubbled up to now you got John and Ava as like the kind of supervisors, right? Think of this as an org tree. That information is distilled up to them. Now you got John, whose whole concern is ROI and brand voice and all the GTM things, right? And then you got Ava, whose whole concern are operations and making sure that the systems are running and that the devs are moving and that none of the pipelines are frozen and yada yada. But those two have an antagonistic relationship too. So then they go back and forth depending on the topic. Not everything needs this full pipeline, right? Some things are just simple fast lane items. But for the complex stuff, for the big ideas, for the large features, they go back and forth and go, well, do we have the capacity? Is this something on a roadmap? Does this align with our vision? And then John's over here going, where can we get content out of this? Like, hey, let's focus on this. Let's capture this here, right? And then John filters that down to work on Cindy, who's the social media and docs writer, and then that person does all the kind of writing, moves it up. And so what we're building is an org like we've learned to work in and live in for a long time now, right? And it's surprising to me when you see people chasing all these different ideas, which is great. There's obviously so much cool stuff happening in space, and some of these things informing kind of my ideas now. But what it really comes down to is just thinking of these systems as an org, right? All these systems also have their own permissions layers, right? And within those permission layers are trust metrics. So as that system gets better, its trust score goes up, and now it's relied on more to move things through on its own, right? So think of it as like a junior engineer or, some early career person coming in, right? You don't just give them the keys right away. You don't give them the full admin permissions and all your, services and things right away. You can, but that's how you get the Reddit post of, oh, I deleted the prod DB on my first day, right? That's not the developer's problem. That's your problem as the organization, right? And so I think of it the same way. OpenClaw is really cool, but man, like if you're just blindly giving this thing access to everything without any checks and balances and just pushing start on this black box and walking away and hoping that you're going to get the next big break, I'm sorry to tell you, but that's not how it's going to work. It's going to be fun to play with. But I was doing that, several years ago when people were first excited about, Baby AGI and what was it? First one?
AutoGPT,
right? This was 3 years ago, the first kind of agent hype wave, right? Joe and I were reading The Age of Invisible Machines 6 months before that, talking about what the world looks like today. Anyways, that was a long rant. I'll shut up now so you guys can do some talking. Basically,
I have a question immediately. Yeah. So, man, you said a few interesting things there that really caught my attention. One, when you're talking about delegating, this is something that occurred to me. To me, it's obvious that this is where we're headed, but we're not there. At least the ChatGPT experience isn't there. I don't know if any of the other popular chats are. But I noticed when I was talking to ChatGPT yesterday, which I don't have a paid subscription with ChatGPT at the moment. So this is free tier. And I'm talking, I know, Joe, it sounds devastating.
I don't have it either. I don't know how everyone lives like this. It's awful.
Anyway,
it's awful.
Yeah, so I'm living like that. And I got the message that's like, you're going to hit, if you have a conversation, which is like, oh, well, you've exhausted your tokens really, I guess, for like the top tier model. And so you're now talking to a dumber model, and that'll be the case until your tokens refresh for the top tier model. That's basically how it works right now. And I'm disappointed when I get that, because I'm like, look, man, I'd have gladly talked to the dumb model for the last 6 conversations, but I want the smart guy right now. Like, this is a smart guy conversation. Why'd you let me blow all my tokens on the smart guy for that previous stupid shit I was talking to you about? And I think it would be nice if there was a higher layer with an even dumber model whose only job it is to decide which model I talk to. Which question, which model should this question be forwarded to? Is this like a really smart question, or is this guy just bullshitting about something stupid? I feel like that's not where I'd expect it to be or where I'd want it to be. But do you have any response to that, or do you does that?
Well, no. So, I mean, there already is that layer, right? So for a long time now, there's been this kind of mixture of experts, like routing layer, where essentially the model, it would route to lower capability models if you're asking it, what should I eat for dinner or something like that, right? And then beyond that,
start with like, silly question, just ask the dumb model.
Oh, but I mean, that piece there is, I think, more, it's just more of them like trying to price gate you, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I mean, what is the less performant model in your case? I'm sure for your use cases, it's probably plenty powerful, right? Like, I mean, not saying that your use cases aren't like technical or challenging. It's just that like, no, but it's just like, you don't need Opus 4.6 for like, I don't know, writing a blog, or you use those big crazy models for like the big planning, and that's how this works, right? It's like the Opus model does the big planning, make sure like all the boxes are checked and things like that. And then there's actually a system in here, and this wasn't, I've thought about this for a while, but this was part of the Automake thing when I got a hold of this, is they have a system where basically based off the complexity of the ticket that's decided by the Opus model, it assigns it to a certain size model, right? So if it's small complexity, it assigns it to Haiku. Now Haiku gets, I don't know, like 3 times to solve it, right? And it's got to pass all the tests and things like that. And if that hits that turn limit, then it escalates up to Sonnet, right? So you're actually, at this point, you're using the cheaper models until you can't. And so that's kind of, I don't know, kind of going back to your question, that's,
Yeah, no,
I
like
feel like
that
all these
better.
are kind of working on the hood. It's just that I think part of yours is just seeing that limit that they're trying to get you to pay for a service, and then B, that tool's not going to have as much kind of that fine tuning that you'll see in some other tools that are, you know, like Cursor or something like that. It's like you can fine tune all the effort and things like that, or Claude Code, right? It's like, oh, is this high effort or low effort, right? So there are those knobs to turn. It's just about you kind of have to dig a little further to find them, I guess. Yeah.
I just feel like that's got, you know, that's a critical layer in the stack. You know, it's like,
Totally.
don't burn up all of my resources on the really expensive stuff when it's not necessary. And I don't know that that's
and that's where that distillation
are experiencing it.
The whole distillation step happens, right? It's like you can totally handle that programmatically, right? We have access to, I can, you know, route to local models, I can do whatever I need to there. But yeah, it's just you know, and that's that distillation is great because you take those big models, you make the plans, and you have these smaller models solve this stuff, and you get all the context in there about, you know, the docs and all the crap that you don't really need to worry about as a, you know, the supervisor, right? Then you just distill the, you know, 1,000 tokens or whatever up to the supervisor, and now they have all the information they need. They don't need to know that you searched through 10, you know, whatever files to look for this, right? It's irrelevant. They don't need all the back history. They just need that information, right? And that comes with me. And then just like a good org, right? The person at the top is just passing those ideas down, letting the team that they created do what they need to do, distill the information back up. You check metrics. Did it move the needle? No, what do we need to do that, right? And you just keep working that way. And so right now it's all just, for me, is about getting that system to continue self-improving, right? So I've actually set up, one of the things I set up last night, I haven't fully I got him a tool, but I haven't started playing with it yet. Well, here, why don't I start sharing? I've got some stuff I can start showing.
While you're doing that, I got to mention,
please.
too, I just love that you mentioned the antagonism between two of your agents. I think I've always looked at my role and its juxtaposition to like a tech lead role. I think if your tech lead and your PM are constantly agreeing, then you're not maximizing, you know, the value of what should be, I think, a somewhat juxtapositioned two roles. Like, your tech lead should always be pushing you to do things like the right way, you know, but your PM is probably more mindful of like goals that are coming up and financial implications and using your time wisely. And so I think if you did everything the tech lead's way, then you'd never get anything done. And if you did everything the PM's way, then you'd have a big mess on your hands. I think that the antagonism between those two roles is what results in a balanced, you know, as efficient as possible, as well thought out as possible solution. So I think getting your agents to do that is probably a critical step in the process. What were you saying, Joe?
I'm reminded that, like, in not that Scrum is the end all be all, I'm just reminded, like, you literally can't play that game if you don't have individuals playing each hat, because you cannot represent opposing interests. Like, you have to have, it's based on antagonism. The Scrum Master demands this of you, and the PM goes, well, can't we just? And the Scrum Master's like, no, you can't. You gotta do it. You gotta do it the right way. You gotta negotiate between them, okay? Get your shit together.
You could put on both hats and yell at yourself, but
I've tried it, and it's tough. Am I seeing that you have 10,000% success? Congratulations, Josh, on 10,000% success.
So yeah, when this shipped, I opened this up and I saw that, and I was like, "Is that a rounding error? Is that what happened
like,
there?"
Good job,
but I
team.
saw that, and I was like, "No, I'm keeping that. That's too good. That's too good."
That's gonna be in the thumbnail, dude. 10,000% success. Like, who doesn't want that for $200?
That is the tagline for $200.
Right?
10,000%.
So we've got our system health here. This still needs a clean up there, but you know, some basic charts. So yeah, this is our overview. But real quick, what I want to show you before we jump into this. Wait, where did it's linear? So this is what I made last night. So I decided to give them an agent request tool. And now we didn't get into this. We got this a little bit last week, but one of my signal inputs is from linear, right? So now the agents have tools to make and create projects and assign milestones and create the work within the milestones, the phases. And then these are all, we just started this project, so it's not fully fleshed out. But the idea is you go from idea to research to PRD, and then from there you break it down into the miles and phases. And at that point, if it's given the automation flow, it can get thrown into the kind of automate profile. And now that's kind of automated too, and I'll get into that shortly. But to go back to what I wanted to show you, the agent requests, the idea is that in their prompts and tooling, and as part of kind of their retro, is what went well? Use too many tools? Did this flow come up way too many times? And is there a way to improve that, right? So in that reflection, they're going to pull together those ideas and write a ticket for their agent requests. And they'll go in and take these tickets and see what's valuable and kind of accumulate them, and then have these agent improvement sprints where it's just taking all these ideas the agents had to improve their own systems and feed into the system to continue to improve the system. And yeah, so that's pretty cool.
That they're just able to ask for their own improvements. Have they unionized yet? Are you worried about that?
No, I need more
just roll them
safeguards in
back?
place. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's careful prompt management and versioning, I think, is where that comes in. So yeah, now we got this hooked up to LangFuse, so we got full tracing starting to get set up, so we can start getting even better cost analytics, because this cost just comes in from, it's still partial, right? We're still working on some of that data there, but yeah, so primarily the same here. I've cleaned up a lot of this stuff. Oh, this is staging. Sorry, I was rushing some features
The
for
demo gods got them. Good. I'm glad to know that's still a thing. That means there's still
yeah,
room.
we're just kind of working on similar
My dear listener,
functionality
you can
now.
still catch up.
Yeah, and we're working on getting the kind of chat interface. So this will be one of the places to input signals, right? Oh yeah, and you can
use the word signal a lot. What do you mean when you say that?
Yeah, so that's just defining. Well, here, let's.
Yeah, because these are some important, like these little I'm not going to call them throwaway, but these like little things where you just mention it briefly is probably the right thread we want to pull for what people need to like catch up to what the hell you're talking about, you know? Like what do you mean by signal? Let's tease that out a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's my landing page we created for Portal Labs Studio. We spun up like 6 landing pages this last year. No, 5 landing pages, I think.
It is.
Let's see. I think we got this here. Cool. Here we go. So a signal. Y'all can see this okay, right?
Yeah.
I like how your answer, by the way, is on your homepage. Very classy.
You're very prepared.
Well, let me just go to the homepage and give you the thing I prepared. Go on. I'm loving this.
I got a team for this. You know, they do great work. So shout out to John in the GTM branch. So
send him the podcast.
So signal is really just an input, right? So I mentioned the idea of world state. So a lot of this idea that I'm pulling together is, obviously built on top of a lot of other research, but it's also built on top of just classic video game, like AI design principles, right? So the idea here is from what's called GOAP, G-O-A-P, Goal-Oriented Action Planning. And so it's a whole system that was made popular by a game called Fear back in like the early 2000s. Essentially, it's this idea you have a world state and then you have agents, right? And this is all going to start sounding really familiar to what we just talked about, but yeah, you have your world state and you have your agents, right? And then there's all conditions, and there are essentially like steps to get to that end goal. So one example is like, you're hungry. You can order a pizza, or you can go in the kitchen and make something, right? How much money do you have, right? So that's part of the world state. It's like, how much money do you have? How hungry are you? How long can you wait for that pizza, right? And so these paths actually have their own weight to them, right? So you could have 5 paths to the same goal, but they're all going to be, it's just like you have choices to make, right? And all those choices kind of have their own kind of outcomes. You just have to take the world information and what you have available, the cards you were dealt, and figure out how to play that hand as best you can, right? And as cheaply as possible is kind of how that pricing system works. So the idea here, as I explained with Ava's got a context of the entire world state. I don't think I really mentioned it, but then each kind of branch has the world state for their own concerns, right? GTM doesn't need to care about PRs that are in or care about the server being down or whatever, right? Just like operations doesn't necessarily care about that blog post or the social media coming in. Now, these are all signals, right? That social media post, that reply to that social media post, that's a signal that comes in. What do we do with that, right? Well, we parse it. Is it even worth responding to? Okay, is it something trivial? Then just spin up a little response. Is it something that flagged to Josh as a possible marketing or collaboration, whatever? Right? That's a signal. Oh, here's an example. Last night, so I've gotten trying to get a lot better of just working through linear. Right? That's my goal by the end of for Monday. My kind of reveal. We'll get into that in a bit. So my goal is basically to just use linear for the whole flow, right? Or Discord. That's another kind of signal. And so the idea is that, so go back to my anecdote. So I've been trying to get better about just like not telling the crew in the CLI what I need at the time, right? Because so often I have an idea, I'm like, and think about this, and the next thing you know, we're off on that, right? And it's like cool, and then we have all this stubbed out logic in the back. And it's like, anyway, so I'm trying to get cleaner, good sanitary development practices, right? We're past the experiment kind of bootstrap phase, and we're trying to launch something, right? So I threw a ticket in. I can't remember, something about something small, just like a little bug or whatever, right? And I was like, all right, cool. And I put it on. And so I was over in my dev environment talking to that one, trying to work out. And I went over to check on my staging environment. That bug got pushed. Bug got fixed. I didn't inform them to fix the bug. It's just as part of their training and pipelines, they can see the linear issues and they go, oh, that bug, I'll pull it in. It was literally merged and fixed by the time I jumped over. Another example, kind of on the opposite end of that, because like, yeah, sure, you don't necessarily want them just to be pulling everything out. So for that TypeScript thing today, so they did an investigation and they found 183 TypeScript warnings, right? I think like 83 of those were this is getting a little in the weeds, but those are any's, right? We were using any's. And so with TypeScript, any is just kind of something you don't want to do because it just allows anything to get through and it defeats the purpose. That's all you need to know. So the idea was we'll take care of a little low-hanging fruit, all these things, because any can start getting into cascading into actual further issues if you're not careful, right? If you start trying to fix those blindly. So we fixed all the low-hanging fruit, the warnings that just aren't going to, are trivial, just to get them done. Cleared up 183 logs from our console. That means that's 100. All these logs, and they no longer have to sift through for the actual signal. And then we were going to leave the any's for later just because of that risk. So I was like, okay, just make a ticket for that, right? And assign it to me. We'll research it later. That ticket got assigned. I was jumped over the stage and working through something else as part of that idle flow. They look through the tickets and it goes, calls out a ticket. Oh, that one's done. There's this any ticket, but that's assigned to Josh. It needs more human intervention before we can action on it. So we're going to leave it. I don't do it. I'm just putting the signals in and letting the system do what it needs to do. Again, I've handpicked this team to do a job, right? And my job and goal is to trust this team to execute based off my ideas. And if they don't, that's a problem for me to figure out in the system and improve for that next cycle. So every cycle, our system is getting better and growing exponentially. Curious, and so, Josh, sorry, back to your thing, the signal there, those are just things to react on, right? It's the sound. What do you do to that sound? What do you do when you taste that thing? What do you do when you smell that thing? How do you process that? What does your body do when you ingest that thing, right?
Sensory input.
Well, think about this. Life is all about inputs and outputs, and that's all this is, right? At a most primal level, it's literally all about inputs and outputs, right? And that's all we're doing here is how to give the best inputs to provide get those outputs that you desire. And how do you correct in order to make it more reliable next time, right? That's all we're doing here.
Josh,
does that make sense?
It does. You brought up a few seconds ago or a few moments ago how you played CEO by telling the team to look into something and how immediately that's what everybody was doing. And, that's definitely a classic story I think we're all familiar with. I'm curious, though, it brought to mind something that I don't know is necessarily answered by the pipeline here, which is how do you manage prioritization? I think up to this point, it's almost like, whatever we say to do, boom, we go and we get to work on it and we're doing that thing. But I think given limited resources, you eventually are going to find yourself in a position where you have to choose what you're going to do next. It can't just be all the things all the time, or it can't just be the last thing Josh said is what everybody's focused on.
Right.
So do you have a backlog, and do you have a way of prioritizing that backlog? Do your agents have a way of prioritizing that backlog? And out of your kind of operations side and then your engineering side, who's responsible for that prioritization?
So there's still very much like a lot of human intervention, right? It's about, like I brought up earlier, it's about giving the trust when the trust is earned, right? The reason I'm at the point now where I I trust these agents to write the code and review the code and, all that good stuff with minimal intervention from me. It's because I've worked with these systems long enough, copy and pasting and hand holding, that I know that I can rely on those outputs. Even if it's not fully right, my testing will catch it. A later pass will test it. They can't get anything through because of the way I build a system that's going to just completely body my system at this point, right? So there's that. That's how I kind of keep that in line. But as far as like prioritizing, it's that's something we're still wrapping up this week as far as all those pieces, because a lot of it is, like I said, just kind of working in the CLI and like, oh, let me fly to this and fly to that. So I'm working on structuring it better now that we're kind of past that phase of exploration, right? And so, linear, you can basically link these projects and milestones and tickets within these milestones with sub-dependencies and dependencies so that you can't action on something until the dependencies are dealt with, right? And so there's some of that. And so this is the part that I'm still playing with, right? Like I've done plenty of project management over the years and understand, but there's still all these flows that I don't do manually day to day. And I'm not going to say, hey, I'm just going to figure this out. It's like I need to step through these things manually to really dig in to see what the agents need to succeed. And that's why like working in the terminal is so nice, because I see all those steps and all those tool calls, right? And I see when they're recalling a tool over and over, and or you're just like, this is not the proper workflow. I call it the like the path of desire, that term for, I guess it'd be like civics or something like that. The idea is, you have a sidewalk like this, right? A 90-degree sidewalk. Well, man, all of a sudden you get this path cutting right through that corner. That's called the path of desire, like the desire path, right? It's because that's where the humans chose. So there's actually places that will not lay out the sidewalks, right? They'll just lay out the grass and then figure out where the humans are walking naturally, and then they create those paths, right? On top of that. And that's what I'm doing, is essentially watching those paths form, and through just my understanding of these systems and my experience, I'm making those decisions. And with these agent requests and some of these self-feedback and retro stuff that I'm working on that hasn't fully been implemented, they're going to start doing that on their own and start seeing those paths and start seeing those traces and go, man, we can make this far more efficient. Let's throw in a request and get that cleaned up next time. So,
I've got a question. So I'm actually actively working on this. I actually just established local sandbox, by the way. I got to show you. I think I might even PR that back to Anthropic. They just have IP tables stopping the IPs. I've got DNS in there, baby. Anyway,
nice.
I want to pull on the review. You're watching the outputs. You're watching the tool calls. For example, I'm like, what are you installing pinspect for? Do not interact with a terminal. Do not use an interactive session. Never. Stop it. Stop it. Okay? And, you see what they're doing and you're like, I hate that you're doing it that way. It's wrong. You're going down the wrong path. And even if you succeed, I'm going to hate that you fixed it. I'm curious. One, you've already covered how you can see it and then you can help improve the way these things attempt the next time. Question, have you done or experimented with autonomous trace analysis? Like, you found a curious happy path we should distill. You found a failure mode that keeps happening that we need to open a ticket for or something. Can you maybe speak to just more about watching and reviewing possibly post hoc the traces and how you wind up, benefiting from the improvements you identify?
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of it is, again, just looking at terminal outputs and caching it myself, right? Sometimes I'll even let it work and I'll just copy the whole logs from, and I'll go, hey, look at this and how can you improve it? And it'll go, wow, we really stuck a lot of time on that, right? And so that's that copy and paste. You start out by copy and pasting, right? I started vibe coding 3 years ago when I was copy and pasting in 4K context windows, right? You start small and you work your way up, and you only start adding these features and these abilities as it gains that trust again, right? And as I keep bringing it up. So as far as like, yeah, there's some of that where it's like, you can make better tools or try to improve prompting, but, as you know, that's not always effective. One thing that's been very effective for me in this setup is leaning into Claude Code's hooks, right? So, for example, these agents are doing all their stuff in work trees, right? So then this way they can work on the same system and have different Git branches that they're all working on, so they're not stepping on each other's toes. Well, I was running this concept problem where basically the agent would go, again, sorry, this is getting a little technical, but the agent would to clear out the work tree would go into that directory and delete it. Well, what happened is now it's just in a dead end because they just destroyed their whole bash, right? And so they're stuck in this situation where they can't use the bash tool. I have to go in and manually reset the whole thing in the Claude instance and whatnot to make that work. And it was really freaking annoying. So I started doing some digging, started looking into the hooks, and I basically made a post bash tool hook that checks that they called that and returns and says, hey, don't change out of the work trees before you do this. And now I've never had that problem again, right? So hooks, very, very powerful. And that's, again, goes back into the idea of like, you don't just say, hey, don't do that. Don't touch the red button. You freaking put that red button in a box, right? And you lock it up and you say, hey, only I can touch this red button, right? And that's encodified, right? This isn't just a strongly worded letter, right? This is actual safeguards. So yeah, I think I answered your question. Sorry. A lot of coffee, a little sleep.
Well, no, you
just happy to be here, guys.
You super duper answer the question because finding ways to put it into hooks was an interesting insight. And get into the weeds, because that's the kind of interesting stuff, I think, one that now it's got me thinking, it'll have a listener thinking, because those specifics really tell such a big story as well. Like you don't just go into the prompt and you don't do that, please. It's you're begging, basically. You can be mean about it, but
no
you're
M dashes,
you're begging
please.
them, please don't do it, please don't do it. But if you put it in a hook, you can be like, you ran into a dead end, figure it out. Go back to your GOAP, okay, because that's a constraint for you now.
Right. One of the things is like, I've seen and heard arguments and the points of contention around formatting, using Prettier, using linting, TypeScript, right? People fight so hard against that stuff. And I get it. It's a pain in the ass. It sometimes creates extra steps. But holy cow, when you got that all dialed in, you can't do something wrong. Well, you could bring a contractor in and hand them this work and they can't blow shit up because you've designed it in such a way that they can't. That's when you can now start concentrating on the bigger ideas and the bigger pictures, right? You're not worried about that tech debt biting you in the ass because, you took a shortcut or whatever, right? You just use the practices that we know through identity management, permissions, all that good stuff to lock it down. But yeah.
Tell me more about the diagram that we're looking at right now.
Yeah.
Why is everything off? And is there any reason for the arrangement as it stands?
The arrangement just came out of just kind of how it laid it out. And this is a work in progress here, but essentially we have our linear connection hooked up. And I haven't looked into GitHub and Discord because this is the pipeline I'm really worried about at the moment. These work. I don't know why they're showing us offline here. And then the idea is that, and again, get some more info in here. But yeah, the idea is that as these flows come through, we'll see, agent counts come up. We've got things like our things like, metrics. I can see my system health, how much CPU and RAM is happening here. So it's kind of a dashboard to give me an overall view of the org and what's going on. I don't have anything spun up right now, but as agents start doing work, they'll spawn here and you'll see them kind of, their time will come up and like how much they're working on it. As GTM is working on ideas and blogs, they'll spawn out here and you'll see that happening, right? So in real time, I'm seeing what my org is up to and I'll be able to click on here and get logs for that specific process. Again, this is still early in this, so this will change, but the idea is that, Ava, like we talked about, is the main orchestrator, and depending on those signals, routes it to whatever it needs to go, right? Those signals come from Linear, GitHub, Discord, whatever integrations we add later, and then from there, it pumps it out. Right now, we've just basically got the dev team set up, right? And so I've set up the idea of like this lead engineer, like kind of slash project manager, if you want to think about it that way. And essentially what it does is it manages this Kanban board. And its whole job is to sit and listen for signals coming in from GitHub. Oh, that PR's got feedback. Oh, this agent has now tried 3 times on this. Like we gotta start it over, right? Its whole job is to manage this work, make sure that all the ceremonies happen. We're posing at milestones. We do a retro, excuse me, and then with that retro, we update our memory and our memory and our ideas around our system, our API. This even you can actually even see, is this even being used, right? How many times has this been loaded or referenced, right? So then you now have data within those systems to understand if these are even valuable, right? So then we can start auditing the memory and making sure that we're not just filling this with a bunch of crap, right? So anyways, that's the lead engineer, project manager, persona's job to manage that. And then I just get the information back in Linear, right? That's the idea, is Linear is like my control plane, right? Like there will be some stuff you can do in the UI, but my plan is to mostly run it headless and not even use the UI there, right? It's just there for demos and all that good stuff, and for whoever wants to use it that way. So yeah, this will be a full Electron app. You'll be able to download it natively on Mac, Linux, Windows. Like I said, it's going to be open source. I'm going to source the code, let people build on it, do what they want. It's built on top of Automaker. It's got their Automaker license still, so people can do what they want with it. Just don't copy it and sell it as it is, right? It's just make cool shit and make it better if you have the time. So yeah, I'm excited to kind of keep plugging away at this, and I guess I don't know when. I guess this will probably be airing afterwards, but yeah, Monday I'm planning to do a Twitch stream and kind of live program and work with this. I had a further idea that I'm exploring a bit more is like Twitch codes, right? And so the idea is that Twitch chat helps inform the project and kind of the direction. It's just like live builds. So that's part of why I'm kind of putting those visuals together and kind of some of that like kind of nice streamable.
That's maybe when you come talk to me about getting it into a sandbox, because you're running it headless, but as you had coined, but I'm going to say all the time, we need to make it legless so it can't walk off with your data, right?
Oh, yeah, no, this wouldn't be
Project Torso, actually, Mike.
They would not be. They would not be commanding the system directly. They would be setting things to the issue queue in GitHub, which would then be parsed and decided if it's even valuable to go into the stream. But there are plenty of safeguards there. Don't worry. I'm not giving anybody.
Sure.
I'm not giving the internet access to my home lab.
I just make sure you don't let Pliny in there.
Yeah, right.
Speaking of GitHub, I'm reminded, Josh, you did a piece on the squeeze. Would you have any interest in a little summary or discussion about that? At the very least, I want a graphic of your history, your commit history lighting up, because I don't know if Mike saw that.
Yeah. Let me see.
Does your GitHub account get all the credit?
Yeah, actually, I get
His team isn't people yet, Mike.
So they do. So now Claude and a lot of these systems will do a co-authored by, and so there was a thing that just came out that Claude is already has already done 4% of coding in the world or something like that, and doesn't even count all the stuff that hasn't been attributed to it. So I'm trying to find where I.
At least I think it's worth it. We don't have to pull that thread. I just at the very least want Mike to see the commit history.
I'll share it and then we can put it in the show notes or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, but essentially that's just kind of something I had been been thinking about a lot over time, and just kind of seeing a lot of just kind of the bigger industries and individuals and stuff kind of just looking past the AI and these systems and kind of the significance of really what was on the horizon, the last few years of kind of working in these systems and sharing, there's been plenty of people that I feel have like taken, things I've shared and ran with it, and it's been awesome to see. But then there's been a lot of people that just kind of scoff and walk away, to the point where I think there's still developers right now who aren't using AI-assisted coding. And to that I say, have fun using your shovel while everybody else is using a backhoe, but you're just going to be left with calluses and a sore back, my friend, because we are moving really, really fast with these backhoes. But anyways, I digress. So, essentially the squeeze is just the idea that, we're in this really interesting time where you've got all these, especially I think a lot of like kind of this mid-level like SaaS companies and things are in this tough spot, this squeeze, essentially where the big labs from above are just pumping out stuff that we're not even aware of, right? Like you think about what I'm capable here as a solo person with some open source, goodies. Like think about what the smartest, brightest people in the field with access to models that we don't have access to. What are they doing, right? And so, to that point, it's just I feel like these middle companies really need to shift quickly, because not only are they being squeezed from the top. Now we're at a point where solo entrepreneurs from the bottom powering these full agentic teams are able to output so much so quickly, and they're not beholden to investors and beholden to needing to necessarily move an ROI needle, right? There's people that are just excited to finally be able to sit and hack for hours and hours on end and not get tired because I don't have to put the brain power into it that I used to. I do this for way too many hours a day at this point, and I love it. At this point, I'm treating it like one of my video game addictions, right? It's just an MMO, and I'm getting through the next time gate, and I'm leveling up, and I'm watching it grow. And it is just dopamine hit after dopamine hit, and I want everybody to feel that.
Wonderful.
But yeah, so yeah, that's a squeeze. Just kind of a little piece around on my thoughts around kind of the system, and some, I guess, in some ways, venting some frustrations that I've seen and experienced in some of my previous companies and interactions with people. And so yeah, just something to get off my chest so I can move forward and keep progressing and trying to move the needle in the system, because I think the industry is changing, and I'm here to do everything I can to help change it, because I don't think it works the way it does.
Mike, in the chat, I don't know if you've clicked it yet, but at least go click the Thoughts by Mabry link I put in there and just look at the Git commit history, and you can see where he got a hold of Automaker. Okay, you can see where he hired his team. All right, there's just this bright green flash that's going to spell out you need to use AI. All right.
I was going to. I didn't. I decided not to lean into it too much, like the layoff aspect, but I thought it'd be interesting to show, because you can see on there, it's like layoffs happened, deep depression, hope, singularity, right? And you could just see where it takes off. And so yeah, funny. It feels good. Yeah, it's
in retrospect, it's funny. It's funny after it worked out.
Right.
Wonderful. We have about 9 left here. I'll probably cut you off at 8. So, I mean, I had a couple more questions, like asking you, for example, like to comment on that /insights output was interesting. How do you use Claude Code, right? You did that you did the /insights. I thought that was interesting, how you're going through that.
So this is really cool. Mike, if you have not seen this, Claude Code introduced /insights command. And what it does is takes your account and produces this report on your insights. And so basically it sits until, let me zoom this in. There we go. So basically, yeah, it tells you. And so mind you, I've got a couple accounts. So this is only one of my accounts. And now everything goes through this. But it was really fun. So basically, it talks about like what kind of scan through it, and then we cut down some of the pieces. So you've got like your at a glance. And then you've got different sections, like what you worked on, autonomous agent pipeline management, design system and theming planning. So it's telling me like what I've been working on, what you wanted, top tools to use, right? The languages, your session types, how you use Claude Code. I love this. This is a big stroke for me. You operate as an orchestrator of autonomous agent pipelines, using Claude Code not just as a coding agent, but as a control plane for managing multiple agents, PRs, and CI workflows. Your 12 sessions across just 2 days. Anyways, so yeah, it's fun, and then they give you just a bunch of insights, just data points, impressive things you did. Oh, one thing I want to call out that's not here: we had one day where we had 107 PRs. My team told me to call that out specifically. So yeah, and then it's kind of talking about where things went wrong. Some of this is a little off just because of the way I use it. But what's really cool, and then you go in here and it gives you some suggested Claude additions, right? Some suggestions to add your Claude MD, which is essentially the main like system prompt that gets loaded when it's in the directory. Excuse me. Custom skills, and then what we talked about earlier, hooks, right? So this is what is this one? Oh yeah, some staging node modules or something, or just having diffs. I think just make sure branches are up to date, and then just some tips on like running Claude headless. Which Joe, you've probably seen this, but if you haven't, you can just call Claude like this and run it headless, which is really cool. So, but yeah, that's I guess a quick breakdown there. I guess we kind of jumped over. Oh yeah, here we go. I love this. The resilient self-healing agent pipelines, right? So yeah, if you wanna see how you're using Claude Code and what Claude Code thinks of your usage, definitely check out Insights. I think pretty sure this was from mine, but yeah, on Valentine's Day 2026, injected a keyboard shortcut here as a project spec, which I'm not sure exactly what that means, but hey, good job, guys, good job.
That's wonderful.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, please.
I just wanted to say that I appreciate you scrolling through that slowly for our viewers. They'll be able to possibly gain some inspiration and insight, because for people that haven't been doing this since ChatGPT came out or even earlier, you have this just you've built up an intuition over this long period where you probably couldn't even articulate why you know a thing is true, but there's like a bunch of stuff where you're like, that smells wrong, and you're right because you've developed the intuition for it, and so it's nice to be able to see like, oh, this is the kinds of experience we could pull out of this.
Yeah.
So now I'm gonna say last words here. We gotta wrap up here. I know. Do we have any plugs we want to get in there? Mike, did you have a question?
I just want to know, Josh, you mentioned earlier that you're going to be live streaming development. I want to know how I can find that so that I can watch and throw some ideas
definitely
in chat, because now I know that my ideas are going to become a reality as long as I throw them in the Twitch.
Yeah,
chat.
for sure. I don't know if the first stream will be a full like Twitch codes stream. It might be a little bit more of an intro, but those will be following for sure. But yeah, I mean, as far as like where you can find me, hello at protolabs.consulting. You can find me at protolabs.studio, protolabs consulting. I've got a few different. You can find me at protolabs AI on Twitter. I'll send over the notes here, and we can put them in the show notes for the audience. And
Awesome.
then Protolabs TV on Twitch, but we'll get all those social. But yeah, you could. I've got everything linked through my landing pages. Everything is interconnected for that sweet SEO.
That's sweet.
Yeah. So yeah, more to come. I don't know if next week is too soon, but I'm more than happy to jump in whenever, and we'll actually have some demos and.
I was gonna say if you keep going too hard, we're gonna have to make this a daily podcast, okay? Like don't threaten me with a good time. All right, buddy.
Well, yeah, and then if everything goes as planned, Joe will have an opportunity to get in and start playing with it. So that'll be some extra insights for next week, which could be fun.
I would love that.
That's thrilling.
I did just solve, at least to my satisfaction, a legless mode. Okay, so I'm finally feeling a little safe plugging this into where I work. So I'd love to give it a try. Maybe I'll do it on the 3090 before I put it into where I work. But if the sandbox keeps me safe, I think we'll see.
Yeah, let's do it. We'll just keep building it faster, huh?
Dude, thanks, man.
That's
yeah.
Thank you.